Are you worried about today's dire financial situation?
Put simply, I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
The storms on Wall Street continued today after regulators seized the assets of Silicon Valley Bank, marking the largest bank failure since the 2008 financial crisis.
Do you worry you'll have enough to pay your mortgage, pay your children's college tuition, enough to retire?
I believe our banking system remains strong.
Regional banks in focus once again today as the market digests the fallout of the First Republic failure.
You have questions, we have answers. It's the gold standard with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Yes, it is, and we thank you for joining us. Back together again. Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn here for the Gold Standard Radio Show.
I get a lot of anxiety when I hear that intro.
It's in a world. It's like in the movie trailers, when they try to drum up anticipation.
Well, Yellen's talking about how safe the banks are, and Biden's talking about how everything's working. It makes me feel very unsafe.
You feel a little gross?
Fragile.
Are you telling me, Ken Russo, you don't believe that everything is just okay with our money system?
I don't know. It's not. Maybe some people think it is, but no, it's not.
We're going to jump into it today because I think many of us, especially now that the holidays are here, feel, once again, we're slapped with the fact that our dollar is just worth less. Not worthless, but worth much less.
I think we talk about things, we say, oh, is that a guarantee or what? I can guarantee that over the next few years, our money, our paper money, will lose purchasing power and it will be worth less.
Worth less.
And what's the title of today's show? Lost purchasing power.
There you go. That's what we're going to talk about today.
What does that mean?
I'm going to ask you that question because I think purchasing power sounds great. I love to be empowered with purchasing.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me about it. But before we do, we always like to see how we got into the situation we're in with our monetary system. And it all started back in 1971 with Richard Nixon, who decided he'd take away the gold backing of the dollar, essentially, right?
Right. And for those who are listening for the first time, our money used to be backed by gold.
Right.
And then all of a sudden now our money's backed by nothing except debt.
What would you prefer?
Well, I would prefer strong money, strong currency. That's what it's supposed to be, something we can trust, something that's safe. And what do we have is exactly the opposite.
We have paper.
And in 1971, took us off the gold standard. I am not a
Tricky
crook.
dick.
Yes. So how could they print all this money out of thin air?
Yeah.
Trillions. And how could the monetary supply just be expanding? And how could we have all this debt? We only had very little debt, even 40 years ago when President Reagan took office. How has it gone from $900 billion in debt when he took office to $34 trillion in debt now? And it's going to be 45 or 50 trillion over the next 5 or 10 years because the spending is not going to stop. The debt is not going to stop because we are in a debt-based system. We even have to create more debt to pay the interest that we're paying on top of the debt.
And what does that do to you? Because I think as people who just, consume the news cycle and we see all this spending, you go, okay, well, that's not, it's almost like the government doesn't believe that's real money and we don't believe that's real money. And then suddenly people realize, well, maybe my dollar's not worth what it used to be. How did that happen? And it is because of all of this spending, right?
Yeah, well, the one good part is actually Chairman Joe.
Yeah.
He was caught this week talking about some numbers, which I think could clear up a lot of this for the people who are listening at home. Now, if you're really fearful about, your money or, your purchasing power, which we're going to talk about today, or the dwindling dollar, here's Joe to make you feel a little bit better.
My watch, instead of Infrastructure Week, America's having infrastructure decade. Over $1.3 billion. Trump just talks the talk. We walk the walk.
Yeah. Huh. Now, if somebody didn't catch that at home, I want to read this here for a second.
Could you please? Because I need to catch this. All right.
On my watch, instead of Infrastructure Week, and no, don't forget, you have to put on the politician voice. Instead of Infrastructure Week, America is having an infrastructure decade. Now, this is where it gets real good.
All right.
Over $1 billion, 300 million trillion, $300 million.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Trump just talks the talk. We walk the walk. And that number again, folks, for people who are at home who haven't yet gotten into their car to take all of their money out of the bank or out of the stock market, over $1,300,000,000,000 $300 million. Now, you can't make this stuff up.
You
Jeff.
can't. And this is a guy who's in charge.
I mean,
this is
our now it's comical, but you want to know what? It's sad because
scary.
Yeah, it is scary because these are the people that ultimately are making decisions about where we head from here. We're already in a bad situation when it comes to our money. What corrections have to be made so that our dollar strengthens?
Yeah.
What corrections have to be made so that our banking system is safer? What corrections have to be made so that our debt situation and the deficit spending gets better?
Yep. Because
it's spiraling in the totally wrong direction. So, I mean, what we're talking about here, lost purchasing power, and we'll get to that in a second. I mean, it's inevitable when I say that. It's inevitably going to get worse, that our dollar is going to buy less and less and less. And there's a lot of people out there that think we're going to print so much mouse-clicked money, fake money.
You can't see it, so it doesn't feel real, right?
Well, when you go to the grocery store, it's very real. When
kidding.
you pay your utility bills, it's very real.
Those Christmas presents, all the groceries for your holiday meals. I mean, you think about how much we paid for Thanksgiving a few weeks ago. We've got Christmas, Hanukkah's going on now. You can tell when you go to the grocery store that there is a difference in what you paid, no matter what the Biden administration tells you, no matter how many million, bazillion, gazillion, trizillion dollars he wants to talk about. You can feel it. So what does that mean? I think that's really important when we say that our dollar is worth less or that our purchasing power has been impacted. Can you give us an example? Can you give us a specific? Because I think we see it, we feel it, and then it kind of slaps us in the face and we go, wait a second, we've got a real problem.
Yeah, I don't know if people really realize what's going on. And that's what's so brilliant about their whole game is because they have everybody fooled.
Yeah, it's like a slow creep and then they lie. They're so good at lying too.
If you had $1 in 1971, the same stuff you could have bought for $1 now costs $7.60. 20, how many years later? What's that? 52 years later, okay? So that means that prices over the last 50 years have gone up 7 or 8 times, okay? Another way to look at it is if something cost $100 in 1971, it now costs almost $800 today. They also have a Big Mac indicator. It was probably like $1 in the early 70s, and now it's like 7.
Right.
That's our dollar at work. That's fiat money. That's the government creating inflation by expanding the monetary base, by printing trillions and creating trillions of debt. Our paper money, our fiat money, loses value. It loses purchasing power. It loses buying power. So the way you look at it is the more the government prints and borrows, the less our money is going to be worth. Now, we used to be able to export a lot of that inflation to other countries where we would send our dollars over there and then they would send us goods.
Okay.
But a lot of that is changing.
How come?
And a lot of that, well, I mean, these people are understanding that, hey, we don't want to be associated with as many dollars as we, used to.
So they're losing faith in the dollar as well.
They are. And a lot of their central banks of those other countries are buying gold instead of having U.S. treasuries or instead of having paper assets. And the lesson here is lighten up on paper assets.
Right.
And what could you hold on to that has historically held or gained you purchasing power? And that goes back to physical gold, which a lot of people don't even realize. I mean, let me put it a different way. If you had $1 worth of gold 52 years ago.
Yeah, what would that be worth?
That would be worth, let's see, the price of gold was 30, and now it's 2,000. What's that, a multiple of 700?
So think about that. I mean, it's almost like you've got the reverse happening with the dollar, and then you see what gold has done. Over time, gold and precious metals have held on to value. And what's great is that you can keep those precious metals at home with you as well. So you can touch them, you can feel them, you can get to them when you need them. And I think that's always been a really big selling point with precious metals for me is that you can have them at home. You don't have to rely on anybody. You don't have to rely on the government to make the right decisions because clearly, I mean, we saw this week, you've got Joe Biden out there again with his hand out looking for more money for Ukraine.
Right.
And Look, it's
And
not
that's
about
inevitable.
whether, of course, it's inevitable,
Right.
but it's how much more of this can we withstand?
Right, and if
is
it
the
doesn't go
question.
there, it goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
And a better example is this. This might be a little more relevant to people who are listening. If you had $1 in 1999, okay, 24 years ago, that dollar is now worth 55 cents.
Wow.
If you had $1 of gold in 1999, that would now be worth $8 worth of gold or $8 worth of purchasing power. Now, look at the difference. 55 cents or $8. Now, if you look at gold,
I take $8.
Well, think about it. Think of gold as real money. And
Yeah.
if you had $1 worth of silver in 99, and now you have about $5 worth of silver, it's drastically different. One product, the gold and the silver, hold your purchasing power and gain purchasing power. The other monetary asset, which is the dollar, now called Federal Reserve notes, inevitably loses buying power and is constantly worth less. So the question is, as this continues and gets worse, Jen, what's going to happen over the next 10 years?
Yeah.
How much is your dollar going to be worth 10 years from now? So it's imperative that people realize that, and that's where we say, hedge your bets, diversify. You should not have all of your assets that are in dollar-based assets. You should have it in physical, tangible assets, and some of the easiest tangible assets to own is gold and silver.
Yeah, and this is something that will protect all of the money that you work so hard for, so that in 10 or 20 or 30 years, when you want to access that for retirement or for your family's legacy, it's going to still have the same purchasing power. Do you think that the dollars that you've got in a bank account somewhere, FDIC insured, are going to be worth the same?
Based on the track record since the Fed was formed in 1913 and since President Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, no.
Yeah.
They're not. The dollars are going to be worth a lot less. Gold and silver will hold your purchasing power. Not to mention, we'll talk about control, having it in your own possession, privacy, all that. But when you just talk about purchasing power, it's imperative that people are not just all invested in the dollar or fiat money backed by nothing. It's so important that they have some of their currency in actual money, real money, which is gold and silver.
Protect your money. Protect the money you've worked so hard to earn. Keep it in your home when you can get a hold of it when you need it most. 855-322-4653 is a number to call Midas Gold Group. They are veteran-owned, America First patriots. Give them a call. Ask them about gold and precious metals and how to add it to your investment portfolio. 855-322-4653 or MidasGoldGroup.com. There's a whole lot more up ahead. It's the Gold Standard Radio Show with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.
Dr. Gorka here. You're listening to The Gold Standard with your hosts, Ken Russo from veteran-owned Midas Gold Group and Jennifer Horn. Owning private money in the form of physical gold and silver is perhaps more important than ever to your long-term financial security. As U.S. banks fail, the Biden administration sends hundreds of billions abroad while depleting our strategic oil reserves. However, the biggest financial threat may be coming from within: central bank digital currency. The patents have been filed and the big banks have released plans for implementation. Midas Gold Group sees tyrannical implications, the end of cash, the end of financial privacy, big government able to see your every purchase. Could there be ties to social credit? Hear more commentary on the political and economic issues that affect your financial security right here on the Gold Standard. You can create your own Gold Standard with a call to Midas Gold Group, 855-322-GOLD. That's 855-322-4653, MidasGoldGroup.com.
Thanks for joining us. It is the Gold Standard Radio Show. Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn, happy to be back with you. We are talking about, a lot of different financial issues. The central bank digital currency is a big one. Always remind you, if you're interested in finding out about Midas Gold Group, MidasGoldGroup.com or 855-322-GOLD. Now, Ken Russo, we have seen the news stories. Central bank digital currency is coming. It's inevitable. What does it mean? Why will it be coming? How will it impact us? Because for many of us who saw those stories of the Canadian truck drivers and how the government was able to shut them down at the bank, I think many of us, particularly conservatives at this point, might think that the government may try to do the same thing to them.
Well, I would say it's definitely about control and it's about monitoring. 114 countries are actively pursuing a CBDC, which stands for central bank digital currency. So are our bank accounts going to be held at a private institution like Wells Fargo or Bank of America, or will our accounts be held with a government entity like the Treasury or possibly the Fed, which is not a government entity, but our central bank? So that's what I would be concerned about, and it's definitely inevitable. Now, the way I look at it is, do we have paper garbage called our money, or will we have digital fiat garbage?
Digital garbage.
Right.
And it's environmentally friendly, right?
Most of the system right now is already digital, but there still is cash that people like to transact with privately.
Yeah.
So the question is that going to be eliminated? Not to mention the ability for the government to turn on or off your funds, credit score. Did you buy too much meat over the last week?
Right.
So that's already going on in certain countries. For people to think that's not going to happen here is probably a bad assumption to make. Nobody has a crystal ball, but you can definitely see where we're headed. The problem is, too, when the system is reset and we're in a digital system, what's our money going to be worth then? How much more purchasing power are we going to lose?
You said reset, and I think that's really important. So when the central bank digital currency is rolled out, that system becomes kind of the new system of the land, I guess. When the reset means that there will be a reshuffling of value to our currency,
There
right?
has to be. And what I'm concerned about is how are they going to get everybody to go into that system? Now, don't forget, when people are desperate, they say, oh, okay, well, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to do? Sure. So I'm a little concerned by the time this system is ready to play out, what's going to lead up to that? How desperate do the people of the world or the United States of America have to be, and how reliant on the government for them to say, oh, okay, you want us to put all of our assets in a digital system? Oh, okay, save us.
What crisis might happen?
Well, that's right. Which kind of false flag, crisis, how much desperation is there? And I don't want to be in a point of desperation. Right. I want to be in a point of strength. So what I would encourage people to do is have purchasing power outside of this system so that it can't be rolled into whatever they're thinking about doing.
You're really hedging your bets, right? I mean, you bring some of that currency that you can hold on to, precious metals, home with you. You avoid the government oversight. You avoid what could be inevitably coming, right? That central bank digital currency. And you're holding on to your purchasing power because in the last segment, we just talked about how the dollar has really done nothing but devalue and gold has increased its value.
Before the system is digital, before it's reset, you have an opportunity to get some purchasing power out of that outcome, out of that situation. Now's the time to do that. And when I say purchasing power, that could be in the form of gold and silver. There's other people that think that it could be crypto or diamonds or whatever, but we understand gold and silver. I just think that it's extremely important that people realize we're going to have control of some of our money outside of whatever system this evolves into. People have to realize that the system we're on right now, the federal banking system, central banking system, whatever you want to refer to it as, was designed to be built up, inflated, and then torn down. So the question is when it's torn down, what are we going to have left? And a lot of people say, hey, listen, if I have gold and silver, I at least know that I'll have that.
Right.
Because this has happened in other countries where other countries have nationalized retirement accounts. They've confiscated, liquid assets.
Let's dig into that because I've heard you say that before, and I think that sounds so frightening. When other countries have had crisis, they say, "Oh, you're being a patriot. We're going to do this.
We're going to
your
manage."
Help. Right. So talk us through that because I think that people need to be aware that the government is not always there to help, despite what our education secretary said a few weeks ago when he misquoted Ronald Reagan, right?
Yeah, well, it doesn't surprise me anything that these people talk about, but I don't know how they get these positions, but, it is what it is. But if you think about the system we're in now, it's inevitable that happens. The safety is very much, it's not good. And when we talk about desperation, the government is going to be in a situation where they're desperate too. Because if these other countries like the BRIC nations don't want to buy our debt,
It's a great point.
who's going to buy it? And the hedge funds and stuff now have to be offered very high interest rates to buy the debt. Who's going to do it if the situation of the government, if they're in a desperate situation, what are they going to try to make us do? So I would just say that I don't want to have all of my assets in a situation like that. I don't know how anybody would want to have all of their assets, financial assets, in a situation like that, especially since we've seen a bubble over the last 20 to 30 years develop. Many people have made a lot of money in stocks. They've made a lot of money in real estate. Why not diversify?
Right.
Why
Protect
not
it.
take some of your chips off the table? If you continue to put all of your chips in the middle of the table, hand after hand after hand, you're eventually going to go bust.
And look at what the other countries are doing. You just brought up the BRICS nations. You brought up, we look at China all the time. These are countries that are stepping away from the dollar. These are countries that are looking for gold and silver. They're looking for precious metals because they know that's where the value is. So why not do that for yourself?
Yeah, and can you blame them? They
No.
see the debt. They see the leadership. They see the deficit spending. They see the ridiculousness of everything that's going on, the insanity,
Yeah.
that this side fighting against this side. They can see it's in disarray. So when you have chaos politically and you have chaos now socially, we're going to have chaos economically. If people are listening to the show, if they don't think we're going to have chaos economically, I don't know what to tell you. So you have to prepare for that chaos, and the markets are eventually going to experience chaos too. And over time, thousands of years, what's the ultimate chaos asset? Gold.
And also, when we talk about this chaos, we haven't even started talking about the banks.
Right.
The banks are already starting to fail. We had 6 bank failures, I think, so far this year. It's been sort of buried by the mainstream news media. Are the banks going to be there when you need to get a hold of your money? We've heard countless stories. I know you do every day at Midas Gold Group. You hear from people who try to go take a large sum of money out of the bank and they can't do it.
Yeah, and to keep the government afloat, it's more money that's being printed. To keep the banks afloat, they have all these programs, it's more money that's being printed. So all of this safety issue, privacy issue, all of this reset of the system, issues is all going to mean lost purchasing power, because it's going to mean a weaker currency, because we're just going to have to take on so much more debt, and we're going to have to print tens to hundreds of trillions of dollars more. Our paper fiat currency, no matter what, is going to lose purchasing power. I don't want our money to disappear. I don't want the markets to crash. But inevitably, our money's going to lose buying power. It has to. It's what this system is based on. It's based on debt and money printing and money expansion.
And wouldn't you want to be prepared if this happens?
I would say so. Why would you have savings? Why would you have invested, try to do the right thing? Why would you have all of your money in a system where they want to use it to run their agendas? Why?
Right.
Regardless of purchasing power, regardless of safety. Those are important, but hedge your bets. Understand that you don't have to comply. Get a good portion of your money out of the system and into your own possession. It's going to be a lot better off in gold and silver. Track records, history, it does matter.
It really does. And that's why if you've been thinking about how to protect your purchasing power, maybe how to protect your privacy, because you see this central bank digital currency that is looming out there, you have to look into gold and precious metals. And you do that with Midas Gold Group, America First Patriots. They are veteran owned and fantastic people. You're not calling a call center. You're going to actually call and talk to a human being who's going to give you options about adding gold, silver, precious metals into your investment portfolio. 855-322-GOLD, 855-322-4653, MidasGoldGroup.com, MidasGoldGroup.com. And Ken, one more time, I'll give the number, but final words, because now's the time. Don't wait.
Yeah.
Take care of your business right now.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people out there that are turning, assets into gold and assets into silver. There's a lot of people that are trying to, do that for them, a lot of dealers, but be careful. A lot of people out there that are taking advantage of people.
Find someone you can trust, and you can do that. MidasGoldGroup.com, MidasGoldGroup.com, 855-322-GOLD, 855-322-4653, or text GOLD 232425. Thanks for joining us. It's a Gold Standard Radio Show with Ken Russo and Jennifer Horn.